Let me ask you a question. Have you dated with purpose? Dating can be a lot of fun, but once you get to a certain place in life, it becomes less about having fun and more about discovering and then finding what you want in a partner. How do we do this while still enjoying the process? Hello and welcome to the Visible Man podcast. My name is Jack Rollins. I'm the producer for the show. In this episode, Jeff speaks with husband, father, YouTuber, podcaster, author, and pre-engagement coach Shon Hyneman of It's Scary to Remarry about how to date intentionally. As a reminder, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not meant to replace medical or professional help. If you need help, please seek out the appropriate person in your area. And now, here's Jeff.
Scary to remarry, man. That's a whole lot wrapped up in there. It's if you're like Jack said, you're remarried. You've got a whole body of work. You've got several books, a YouTube channel, and a Braveheart community,
Yes.
based on your experiences. So maybe tell us a little bit about what Scary to Remarry is.
Yes, it's based off, of course, like you said, I remarried, but I've been through a divorce, and people ask me, they say, well, it don't seem like you were scared to remarry because you remarried, and relocated. You didn't seem scared at all, but actually, I did. Like there was a time where going through a divorce and getting out in the dating field again. And sometimes you ask yourself, do you really have what it takes to do this again? Because I took my vows before. I said, till death do us part. And I'm still here. and it didn't work out, So sometimes you question yourself and ask, do you really have what it takes to open up your heart again and start over and be willing to learn somebody new? I mean, I was married for about 15 years before I divorced, which gives a pretty good chunk of my life. So yes, that's where it really comes from. I remember days where I was crying in the shower because I didn't know which direction to take next, because it's just a new journey in life. Yeah. So yeah, I was scared, but eventually I took that leap of faith, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah. Checking out your social media, you look very happy, but I know that what's behind that is a whole lifetime of growth and experience and, fears that you've had to overcome.
Yes.
So tonight I want to talk about intentional dating, because, getting back into a relationship after being out of one, and I'm in my late 40s. And I know a lot of our listeners are kind of in the middle age bracket, maybe a little bit younger, a little bit older, but getting back into relationships is scary. And dating with intention, you're looking for something. There's kind of some strategies behind that. So I want to hear about that from what you've learned now that you've gotten back into it and you're happily remarried. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I did a 5-part video series called Dating Intentionally, 5 Ways to Know if They Are the One. And the big part about dating intentionally, especially in today's culture, I mean, so much has changed. I think if people are more honest and upfront about what they want, and obviously, like you said, speaking to kind of middle age, maybe a little bit younger, I'm 45. So we kind of come from a different era, where you actually had to walk up to a woman and talk to her,
Dude, screw that, man. I was never I'm still not good at that. The online apps make it easier, different, but it's harder in some ways because communication, I mean, you got text-based communication, you're swiping, it's different. It's just different. So I don't know. Okay, here's a question. With intentions, kind of what are people's intentions when they date? And like if somebody said, I'm dating with intention, what does that mean?
That means, first of all, that's good communication, but then you have to clarify, do you plan on, say, looking for a potential spouse? Or are you looking to just connect with someone on a physical level? I think you have to be clear about your intentions. Like intentions can go anyway, but you have to be clear with whoever you're talking to where you plan on going. So that way you can give them the option to say, I want to maybe take this a step further, or I'm okay. That's okay. I'd rather pass.
Yeah.
And then that way you're not wasting each other's time. I mean, if you're talking about a middle-aged group, possibly a little younger, you really don't have a lot of time to waste. You probably have kids already, possibly have been through a divorce already. So you've lived some life. So being intentional is everything. I think it's fair to you and it's fair to whoever you're talking to, so you're not wasting each other's time.
Yeah. Something I've fallen into myself is catching feelings. I go in with, I think I have this intent. Like this is, I just want to, as you put it, connect at a physical level, which is a pretty nice way to say it.
Yeah.
But then
right.
I fall in love or, like, so in that way of looking at it, do people know their own intentions? Is it possible to go into it and not really know what your intentions are? Or is that kind of not as common?
Great question. I think I've seen some of this stuff online where, and even some people will even inbox me and say, I would like to date, but I don't know what I want.
Oh, that's honest.
Yeah, very honest. So my thing would be, so you're willing to go whatever way, the wind blows pretty much. And if you are okay with that, then you have to be okay with what comes with it.
That's a pretty honest way to address it. Yeah.
Yeah. In a nice way, you have to be.
Yeah. So it could lead to marriage or breakup or something just in between.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times we have to be okay with those results if we don't know what we want. Don't talk bad about someone if you never really was clear about your intentions, and then you get online or, oh, men are trash, or I can't stand women. No, you didn't know what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you have a 5-part series on dating with intentionality, dating with intention. Can you talk a bit about those 5 steps?
Yes, those 5, they are very near and dear to my heart. And just from doing research and years of working with the church community and then working with people offline, like gathering a bunch of information and seeing what these 5 questions, they're going to help put you on this road that's going to help you say, okay, I'm willing to go with this person. And they even questions that you can ask yourself. Because one thing I find in the dating world is a lot of people don't know what they want, and that's what's destroying relationships. I think and I just want to say this real quick. We just bought a new house. Went to go look at the house the other day. I recorded a video on it.
Congratulations.
And I was talking about the intent, the part of laying the foundation, because they're laying the foundation to our home. They have the wood up, and now they're working on the inside. But you have to get the foundation together first. If the foundation isn't good, based on these questions and research that I've done, then you can't expect a relationship to prosper, because it's never really been cemented. And the relationship can go anywhere, and you just never know the result, like I was saying earlier.
And these are foundation of the relationship with somebody else, right? As opposed to questions you would ask yourself.
You can ask yourself too, because I realize too, a lot of people in the dating world, they don't know what they want. They just figure if someone is nice and they're attractive, the thing, Jeff, and
wait, it goes past that? I'm like, well, you're attractive and you're available, so we're gonna meet up, right? So, but apparently it goes deeper than that, Shon.
It took me some years to figure that out. For some reason, psychologically, Jeff, I don't know really the whole in-depth reasons behind this, but for some reason we believe if someone is attractive that they're automatically going to be a nice person. Which, and don't get me wrong, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Yeah. But if we see someone attractive, we just think that, oh, they're going to be the sweetest person in the world because they're attractive to me.
I've fallen into that before.
I'm guilty.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe there's that physical attraction of like, you're drawn to this person, and maybe you look past some red flags early in the relationship just because they're attractive. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. I've been guilty of that. You see somebody that's attractive, or you're attracted to them physically. It's wrapped up in a nice, neat package. But once you take the top off,
it's so true, man. It's so true.
Yeah,
True.
Yeah. You have the receipt in your hand. You're like, can I take this back? I want to take this.
Oh man, yeah, it gets complicated real fast. So what are some of the questions that you would encourage people to ask themselves?
Well, without getting too deep within the series, because it's 5 parts, I will say one of them that's very important is just your value system. I think that's very important. I think that's something, again, that we overlook depending on physical beauty. Because these things, your morals and your values, they are what hold you together. They're at your very core. Mm-hmm. And it shows you what kind of person that you're going to deal with. Because if, and I heard this before, which is very true. If you go to a restaurant with somebody and someone treats the waitress bad, or they don't tip well, or things of that nature, it's like, these are small things that you could just really pay attention to. One reason I love my wife, one reason I fell in love with her, is because I saw what she do, how she treat people who can't do anything for her in return. I was like she has a heart for homeless people. She has a heart for babies who's starving with no food to eat. Like, these people can't do anything for her, but her heart screams for these people.
That's beautiful.
And to me, yeah, right. That speaks volumes. And guess what, Jeff? Sometimes when I'm not lovable, she still loves me.
She sounds like a great catch, man.
Great.
Yeah.
Great woman.
When we announced, that you're coming to talk with us today, we asked the guys in the server, we're like, so, when you want to date intentionally, like, what are some things that you consider? And somebody brought up what he referred to as shit tests, is what he called them. And it's when somebody's trying to understand your values, but they kind of, he gave, what was the example that he gave to see how you would respond to a question, but kind of testing somebody. What are some of the strategies that somebody can use when they're dating intentionally? Like these shit tests, as I'll call them. Is that a healthy approach, or is there a better way?
I have to use that one. Shit test. That's
I had to ask him what it was. I was like, oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Shit test. I was stuck there for a minute. Yeah. I think one thing that you can really find out about someone is a great question is, what was your childhood like? Understanding someone's backstory. And you can ask, what was your favorite memory growing up? And you find out a lot about that person just through that alone. They can say, I remember my grandma, we used to sit on the porch and drink tea and just have these great conversations. Things like that they don't forget. And I'm just using this as an example. Yeah. But what they're really saying is, this is what I value. So if you're always scrolling on your phone and they talking to you, to them, they're saying that's the most disrespectful thing in the world. What they're telling you through their great experience is, I value your undivided attention. So whatever you're doing, can you please drop it and give me some of your time? So asking questions like that, like understanding the backstory of someone, helps you get the overall blueprint and how they act, what their triggers are, how they might love you, love language, and also like attachment styles, like all these different little things, they come into play. But if we don't understand their backstory, then you're going to be fighting against the 12-year-old Jeffrey who might have been hurt.
I feel called out, man. It's true. Yeah, dude, there's stuff that sticks with me that I could, when you say 12, I'm like, oh God, yeah, I remember that age. I can think of things that affect me today because of that. That's a really good point.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I struggled with my weight most of my life, and I was the fat kid in the group growing up, and we grew up in an era where fat wasn't a bad word, and we weren't shamed for just saying what we wanted to say.
Yeah.
And I took this health journey, but there's things that still stick to me. There's things that girls have said to me that I was crazy about that I would just never forget.
Oh. dude, the timeliness of that comment couldn't be better, because we're going to talk about that in the near term on Visible Man, about men's body issues. So I would love to hear more about your thoughts about that.
That's going to be good.
Yeah, that's good. So back to dating. We also asked about like red flags and green flags in terms of things that you can look for or things that you can uncover about somebody as you're getting to know them. Any advice there?
Yes. Some things you just find out in seasons. You can't know someone in 2 weeks. And granted, you're talking to somebody who remarried in 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah, but I will say, depending on how much time, I think what's important is how much time you're actually spending with this person. Because it kind of somewhat expedite the process, because now you can start to see some, because especially for men, you can find out a lot about us real quick. You find out about our intentions fast,
Tell me more about that.
Yeah, like right with physical attraction. You might maybe you just want to have sex, or maybe you're looking for someone who you're willing to grow with, or sometimes you're thinking, I'm getting older, right? Like my wife is a nurse, so to me, I'm at 45. I'm thinking, we're gonna make this work because I need somebody to take care of me when I'm old.
It's a whole package, man.
Whole package, right? Yeah. So some of us think long term. That I really need somebody that has the mental capacity to love me unconditionally, things of that nature. And those are people who think long term. But then there are some people who think short term, that they just want a quick fix.
Yeah.
They might just want some, like, say, physical attraction and somebody, arm candy that, maybe they go out a lot.
Yeah.
With the world opening up, with, with the pandemic slowly past, going away.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm answering your question. I kind of got off track.
No, you did, because you talked about red flags and green flags, and you were saying that the amount of time that you spend with somebody it can help you understand. I mean, I think back to my own dating experiences when I've gone on dates and stuff, is, do I see the person, if I say we went out on Friday, do I see them on Sunday? Or if it's another week before I see them, the amount of time I spent face to face with that person, it kind of exposes a lot of what their mannerisms are, and it's always hot and heavy in the beginning. It's exciting to get to know somebody new. So there's a whole hormonal component where, like, your brain kind of gets in this soup of excitement, and then 6 months later you're like, wow, okay, all right, this is where we're at, so.
Jeff, I'm glad you brought that up. And I want to say this to especially to the men out there. The newness of a relationship, and I'll just use this as an example, especially when I'm talking to married men. I said, look, if you cheat on your wife, whoever you cheat on her with, I'm just using this as an example, the sex is going to be amazing. I don't care who it is. It's just because it's a different body. But you have to think long term, and thinking that how this is going to affect my kids, how this is going to affect my spouse, things of that nature. But people are chasing that high. Sometimes people are serial daters, or they just love connecting with new people. And then once it die off, they off to the next person, so.
Yeah, that's a great point. In fact, one of your videos, you mentioned promiscuity, and about how these are my words, I forget how you said it, but people should resolve that before they get married, obviously. But how do you resolve that? How do you become unaddicted to that high of that new relationship, that new sex partner, so that you can, quote, settle down and have a more stable existence?
Yeah, you have to unlearn. You have to, faulty ways of thinking. I think too, once you take some time off, let's say from the dating scene, just to work on you. It's hard to go from playing musical mattress, being with a bunch of women, to thinking to thinking that you're going to go from that to one woman. That's like going on a diet, and you just went to the doctor and the doctor told you, no, you can't have pizza no more. You can't have ice cream. You can't have, all these things. And they're telling you have to stop tomorrow. Chances are you willing to gamble with your life because you still used to eating these things. And you're willing to take that gamble. So if you don't trail off, taking this time to detox, then you're playing Russian roulette with whoever you're with. I mean, it's hard to turn that off once you get started. And then just to go to being with one person, I don't know too many people who can do that.
I don't think I've known anybody to do that. But yeah, there's something I've thought of, and I generally don't know the answer. I'm curious what you think. I've heard that you learn about yourself in relationships. So spending time investing in yourself, I fully agree with, taking time after a long-term relationship to work on yourself, whatever that looks like. There's probably some truth to learning about yourself in relationships, but you're kind of, like you said, serially dating. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you have to know yourself. Again, that's important because for me, I guess they call it demisexual. I guess it's where it's like you need to know somebody on a deeper level first before you're sleeping with them.
Okay.
Like that's how I am. I'm a one woman man. I'm a marriage kind of guy. That's just how I am. I mean, I'm struggling with one woman. I can't imagine juggling three.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think there is some truth. I heard Esther Perel talk about that, how you get to know people through dating. So I think it's important to know yourself. Some people have more mental bandwidth than others. I don't. So it just depends on a person. You have to know you.
Yeah. What I've found for myself is emotional bandwidth, that I'm a person who wants to know you as a person, and that it gives me energy, but it takes it too. And that to have an emotionally invested relationship in multiple people is very, very hard, I think.
It's hard. You have to remember birthdays, and you're spending extra money, and somebody's going to eventually lose, right? If you're dating 2-3 different women, somebody's going to lose. Yeah. So how much are you willing to invest in 3 different women before you pick? Are you willing to spend that much? First of all, who has that much time? I know I don't.
It's a lot of time. And I don't know. I like time with myself too, just to do my plants and play guitar and go for a run or something. I got a lot of stuff to schedule, man.
Yeah. And how long do you spend on your plants? Like, I'm pretty sure that's a process, right? That's just not, hey, plants.
It's not just water and walking away. It's, it's weeding and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah.
So your shirt in your community, Bravehearts,
Yes.
the Bravehearts community, with your title "Love Fearlessly." What is there to be afraid of?
Great question, Jeff. Great question. You would be surprised how many, probably not. I mean, you talk to people all the time. There's a lot of people who are afraid to get into relationships, that they've had their heart broken so bad that they just, I'm done. Some people might even, go, they might want to do same-sex relationships. You know what I'm saying? They're tired. They're frustrated. I think the fear is being vulnerable, of opening your heart back up again to somebody. And I tell people this all the time, Jeff. My tagline is love fearlessly. If I wasn't willing to love fearlessly, I never would have met my wife, because marriage would have damaged me so bad that I would have overlooked who I'm married to now. And again, love looks different to different people, but fear is real, but so is love. So I think you have to be willing to take that chance. And if you're going to jump into this whole dating world and starting over, you got to do it with an open heart. You can't do it halfway, and that's where I think the fear comes in, because some people say, well, I'll put just a little bit of myself out there, but you're not being your authentic self when you're only putting a little bit of yourself out there. You're being too reserved.
Yeah. I see a lot of myself in that comment, because, having my heart been broken before, it sticks with you. You know, I was talking with somebody this weekend about a relationship she was in over 20 years ago, almost 30 years ago, and she still thinks about the guy every day, and it still impacts her, and it's heartbreaking, but it's real. You know, it sticks with you.
Yeah. And that's real. I mean, we have experiences when you spend a bulk of your years with one person. I'm not saying that you're going to get over this person overnight. There's a process, but I will say, are you willing to give someone a clean slate and not take that old baggage into a new relationship? And don't get me wrong, I have not perfected that because I've been in therapy over 2 years now. And, you have to take that chance to give someone a clean canvas and say, no, you're not my ex. Because that's where a lot of our hurt come from, is past relationships. But this person, you have to remind yourself, no, they're not my ex. They're their own person with their own different, unique ways of being who they are.
Yeah. Yeah. What about how long do I work on myself? How do I know when I'm ready to date intentionally?
I think it's when you no longer talk bad about your ex. If you're still talking bad about your ex, you are not healed. Because that's going to be the centerpiece of every conversation, or that's going to be that trigger for you every single time. It could be maybe their cologne or their perfume, it could be something small that triggers you and you're like, oh, you smell like my ex.
God, if those words leave my face, man, I'm in trouble. I can't that, but I like that. I like that. It's like a good rule of thumb, because it's like a litmus test on your feelings about your ex, because if you're able to sit at peace with what happened and have a conversation with your new partner or yourself about it and be like, yeah, that sucks, but I'm doing okay now. That's pretty, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's fair. When my wife and I, when we were dating, she told me, after we married, she said, one thing I loved about you is you never talked bad about your ex-wife. And I didn't. And I always, and I've told you before, because you was a guest on my show, and we talked about this before, but I'm not going to talk bad about someone who I invested 15 years of my life with. Obviously, I care to give somebody that much of my life. So what does that look like, me getting on social media bashing her? It's like, I chose her. She didn't put a gun in my head. So what does that say about me?
Yeah. So. That's a good point. You mentioned earlier about how it's different now, dating, for people in our demographic versus younger. Any commentary on how we do that now that there's Tinder and Bumble and all these things out there, as opposed to approaching somebody in person? Does that change the game of dating intentionally at all?
It a little bit. I think with social media, it's easier, but I think it's harder to understand someone. I think it's harder to get to know somebody on a deeper level, because there's so much access to, you have, access to thousands and thousands of women. I mean, can you imagine, Jeff, that just having that whole sea of options?
Dude, the face you just made was pretty priceless. It's just like, it's overwhelming. Yeah.
And to think, people you just a swipe away. I mean, some people, they ghost people. Just because, to me, I think one key to healthy dating and dating intentionally is being content. I think that's something that we don't discuss enough, because with the access we have today, it's just like going to a all-you-can-eat buffet, right? If you go into an all-you-can-eat buffet, you're not going there to eat a portion size.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You're going to get everything you want, and you're going to eat until your heart is content. And that's how some people are with dating. They just had this whole buffet. They just like, I'm just going to eat until my heart is content. And so if you're not being content with one person, it's going to be tough to do that and try to settle down with one person, because that doesn't go away. It's like you still have social media. You still have beautiful women and attractive guys out here. Like, no, everybody doesn't get ugly because you're in a relationship now. There's still going to be beautiful people regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I think being content is something, and I know it's probably a antiquated word in today's culture, but learning to be content can take your relationship a long way.
What it makes me think of is it's almost the counterbalance to that thrill of new swipes for a new sex partner, or new, because that's not sustainable. Which I think my therapist told me one time at one point in my life, but content is like, this is a healthy, balanced meal rather than a buffet, like you said,
Yeah, it would rather and real quick, people say, why would you marry somebody you met on Instagram and y'all married in 6 months? I said, I always tell people she had 80% of everything I wanted in a woman that I desired. 80%. People are trying to chase the 90%. They're like, yeah, I like her, but there might be 90%.
Yeah.
So let me try to keep her in my stable. I mean, stable is probably not a good word, but you know what I'm saying.
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. And let me try to chase the 90. So I'm going to try to keep her. Let me try to chase the 90. I'm going to go back on Bumble and I'm keep swiping because this person I might be a little more attracted to. And then I'm going to choose. Oh, you know what? Now that I got 90%, let me try to get the 100%.
You're never going to find it, man.
Never going to find it when you aren't even 60%, but you're looking for somebody that's 100.
That's true. Yeah, there's a guy, Dan Savage. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but
Dan Savage.
Yeah. He talks about how we all round up. None of us are 100. None of us are 10s, but we're all like 6s or 7s or whatever you want to call. And we all round up, and it kind of depends on what you're willing. What's the price of admission to that you're willing to tolerate? Because we're all rounding up to some degree. Like we're all accepting the flaws in somebody else, which is human. We're just human.
We're human, right? Yeah, we flaw. And I tell people this, everybody has issues. Some people have sandwich bag size issues. Some people have garbage bag size issues. It just depends on what you're willing to deal with.
Yeah. Now, Visible Man is about men's mental health and suicide prevention, and we're talking about intentional dating. Do you have any thoughts on how men might look at intentional dating compared to women?
I think a lot of it is dependent on the age group. I think that's a big, because when you're in your 20s, especially when you're a woman, you're younger. You have a plethora of men you can choose from because you're 20, 21 with no kids and your body is intact. So you have options. So women have a tendency to play the field too. But with men, I think we become more attractive as we get older. Financially, we start to make more. So it's kind of this weird balance where men kind of play the field a little more as they're older because now they have options. Because, I know I wasn't the man in high school because I was overweight and I didn't, and I was working fast food, But now that I'm older, I'm just that much more appealing because I know I know who I am and I know my goals and purposes. So I have a certain attraction to me. So I think it just depends on the age. I don't think it's a cookie cutter answer.
Yeah, I like that. I would agree with that kind of assessment too. So what I'd like to do is switch over to questions that people have they've been listening. So let me just switch over to that. How do we know when a person is the one?
I was just talking about this the other day. I think it's when they actually feel, I won't say a checklist, but I think it's when you have that, whatever you consider your 90 or 100%. Like if they have, 8 out of 10 things that you value, then more than likely that person is the one. And again, I think it's when we try to chase that, maybe let me get those 2 other qualities I think that's when we start chasing is when we kind of get lost, because sometimes I think we lose great people by trying to chase someone else.
Yeah.
So if they fit the bill, I mean, if it's 8 out of 10 things on your checklist, I mean, go for it.
I just pictured you or me walking into a date with an actual checklist. Or like a Google form. Can you just fill this out before we get drinks? Only 5. Sorry. I'm not gonna
Feel short. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, too bad. All right, next question. Can you have more than one soulmate?
Soulmates, like, how would you define a soulmate? Because if you think about your soul, they're basically like the seat of your emotions. They're your experiences, they're your will, your thoughts. So what is a soulmate? We have a lot of, if that's the case, I mean, we have a lot of different soulmates. We have experiences with different people. So I don't know if it's a soulmate. I just think it's somebody who you just fall in love with and you're willing to do life with. Because if we talk about soulmates, we've had plenty of soulmates.
Yeah.
I just think it depends on who you're willing to love.
Makes sense. Okay, next question. How can I make a second marriage a successful one?
I love this question. It's taking ownership of everything that you've done wrong. I think that's the quickest way to heal, is taking accountability for your actions. So that way, when you get into a second marriage, you can say, this was my struggle. I'm very aware of it and I'm working on that. I think that's going to be a key to having a healthy second marriages. Because if statistics be true, according to psychology today, second marriages, the divorce rates are higher because people haven't learned from the first one. They think it's the person they're with problem opposed to their own problem. So if you're willing to own up to what your part that failed in the first marriage, then you're halfway there already.
Okay. Is there a reasonable time period after separation and divorce for someone to get back in the dating pool?
It's subjective. Yeah, and I'm learning this, Jeff, as I speak to more people, that there's really no cookie cutter answer, because people always look at anomalies and say, well, they did it, but they're not you. And we spoke about it earlier. I think it depends on how you talk about your ex.
Yeah, I like that rule of thumb. That's good. I'm going to remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. How can we make sure that the time we spend with someone is spent effectively?
You have to get the video series. You have to get the dating intentional series. No, but
yeah.
I think if you have your core questions and what you value, and you spend time with that person in those questions, that doesn't mean that you got to have out your, your phone and you got these questions, but just more of you can find out a lot about a person, Jeff, by who they admire. You can ask them if it's something simple. If you had a chance to have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be? And just say, if they say, I would have to love dinner with Mother Teresa, that speaks volumes. Because you could choose anybody you want, but you chose to have dinner with Mother Teresa. So you find out a lot about a person through that alone.
Okay, next question. Do you have any tips on opening up and being our authentic selves?
Yes. No relationship is healthy without vulnerability. You got to have a vulnerable piece. That I think that's one of the core things in a relationship that you got to have. But you have to be careful in how you dish that out, because everybody can't handle your authentic you or some things you might have been through in the past. So you have to tread lightly and understand, is this person emotionally mature enough to handle your vulnerability? And you don't have to give them your whole life story, but maybe you can give them something small. Maybe you can say, when I was 14, this happened. You don't really have to go deep, but you can, and then see how they handle that. And if they run away or they just like, you crazy, or if they just don't, things of that nature, nope, reel it back in.
So it's almost like a metered vulnerability as you're kind of like testing the waters a little bit.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
How does one handle a date who has old-fashioned values and is expecting certain gentlemanly behavior?
Yeah, you got to find somebody who has those same values that you have.
Mm.
And Jeff, I won't even put an age on that because my wife is very old school, and I'm 12 years older than her. But she's had older parents.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, her parents are older, so that's where she get them old school morals and values.
Okay.
So I think it just depends on the person and how they were raised. If they're into, maybe he, old school. I talked about this not too long ago about is Chivalry dead? Because even in today's time, some women would look at you crazy if you open the door because she think you trying to look at her butt as she walk in.
I just realized you could do that. I never thought about that as an intention for holding a door, but okay, all right.
Yeah, that's the old me. That's not me anymore. But it just depends. So they might have those old school morals and values. They might not. If they have it, then it makes the relationship easier for you because you're expecting them to open the door for you. You're expecting them to check the doors at night before you go to sleep. Like just small things like that because that's what they value.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. One final question, and then I want to have you tell us about how we can find your stuff. So is open communication important in dating intentionally?
Very important. One of the key factors, you got to have open communication. And one thing that I've learned over time is repeat back what the person is saying to you. And for all intents and purposes, please put down your phone. The phone is a great tool, but it's also a killer. I believe multitasking is the very opposite of great communication because you're not focusing on this person. When you give them their undivided attention, they feel heard. And if you're repeating back to them, you say, what I hear you say is, so that way y'all both have clarity on what you just spoke about. So you got to have that communication. I think that's one of the keys to a healthy relationship.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So how do we find your work?
Yes, you can find me I'm all over the place. You can find me on YouTube at It's Scary to Remarry. All social media platforms is Scary to Remarry. You can get the 5-part video series, Dating Intentionally, 5 Ways to Know They Are the One at the number 5 ways to know.podia, podia.com.
Okay, great. We'll include all those links in the show notes afterwards. So if you didn't catch that, you can just look in the show notes. Shon, this has been great. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you being with us today. And I appreciate your wisdom that you've been able to build and share it with us. So thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Jeff. This was great, man.